today has literally vanished. I mean, like, absolutely just disappeared with almost no passage of time. It's been very bizarre. Days like that just freak me out a little bit because it's odd. It is really, really odd to go from sort of like 6 o'clock in the morning to whatever time it is now, like 4 o'clock. It's just weird. Anyway, what I'm going to talk about today, other than vanishing time, perhaps it's the Bradford Goblin. I've never heard about the Bradford Goblin, actually. This is a thing. I first heard about it when I was at university. And there's apparently a goblin with a long finger that lives up on the moor. And if you run across this goblin, I don't say boggling. If you run across this goblin, you have time stolen from you. And this has been something that's been something of a local myth, seemingly, for several hundred years. I had literally never heard of it until like the late 90s. I'm saying a lot again. Yeah, until the late 90s. Did a little bit of research, and it is a thing. And maybe I should do a video on that. There's so many things I want to do videos on, and I just end up doing them on Warhammer, which is fine because Warhammer is awesome. It really is. I've got the camera weirdly switched around as well today, so I look weird. I look fatter than usual because it's a bottom up angle. But yeah, work has been a little bit. Yesterday afternoon was actually better. I had a really good meeting and some, for me at least, not for everybody involved, some really positive outcomes from that meeting. And I can see how some people will not enjoy that. Myself, because I like to work in a very structured manner. I like to create the structures and then work within them. Often to my own detriment sometimes, because effectively you can not make yourself entirely redundant, but by putting such stringent structures in place, you negate the need for a certain level of skill, and so you can lower the barrier of entry to certain things. Now, because I have quite a diverse and specialist skill set, I'm not worried about that, and I do think that the productivity gains from having those structures in place are significant. No, I don't think that those gains are significant, and that needs to be addressed to meet with the wider business strategy and the overall output requirements of what's been needed to fit in with the financial forecasts. If you're not aware, there is a significant shortfall in students in the HE sector, not just in the UK but globally. There was a dip around 16 to 18 years ago in births, so that has obviously led to a dip in student numbers in the sector, but also also the perception of the need to have a degree has diminished somewhat, and I think those arguments are valid, to be honest. I think there is much more utility in having micro credentials and certifications rather than qualifications, especially in a world governed by specific softwares and a person's aptitude, expertise in those software solutions to deliver on business requirements. So I suppose this is looping back to what I was just saying, isn't it? That having a need to restructure and realign your business, in this case the education sector, with the requirements of the world, rather than trying to force the world into a somewhat antiquated model is the way forward. Now, I should do this somewhere else, shouldn't I? I should have this conversation because it would go on. I suppose there is some argument there that, well, a degree isn't about, or any degree, any further education into higher education, into doctoral research, anything that, perhaps not research, but certainly undergraduate and below level, potentially talking about master's level, is the actual subject as important as one's ability to deliver on the requirements of that course? Is the actual output, is the expertise that you gain from it the valuable asset there, or is it understanding that you can follow a process, you can do something for 3, 4, 5 years systematically to get to an end goal? Is that more valuable to employers, showing that you do have the cognitive ability to perform in that manner? Well, that's a really interesting question, and one that, again, I think needs to be addressed by the sector at large. I would argue that mentality is, again, much like the need to have degrees, antiquated. But that's just my perception. I think that just having a degree now doesn't separate you out, and there is the perception that because you're paying for a degree, you get a degree. So I think looking at those gains that you would assume somebody that wants to better themselves are going to get through the process of going through a degree and learning whatever it might be, are then mitigated by that consumer mentality that you are buying a degree, not you are having a privilege to learn how to do something. And that's the conversations that I've been struggling to have, certainly at a mid to lower senior level. Institutionally, I think in the sector there are a lot of people worrying about that shift in paradigm of education going to either stackable micro credentials or literally just certifications in X, Y, or Z. And I can see why, because it is a fundamental shift in how things are structured. I mean, it's not just a case of throwing out a course, is it? I mean, it is literally a ground up rewriting of like how awards are given and what those awards look like in terms of educational credits, how that then maps globally against what other countries are doing to allow for transference of skills of people. It's a whole gamut of issues there, but yeah, it's interesting being in the sector at the moment, because the stability just isn't there. But I think that shift that needs to happen, along with the digital transform that is currently ongoing, to allow us to work more, I hate to use the word agile because it's not the right paradigm for what we're actually talking about, but it is a more agile production of educational content. We need to respond to the market rather than having the classics that are like our evergreen educational content. Yes, you're still going to have elements of that, of course you are. You're still going to have your groundings in physics, maths, English, all of those things, but the actual functional elements, the parts that are layered on top, the things that matter after you have that foundational understanding, those can be agile, and you can realign those agnostic to the core learnings of whatever the discipline is. That is my argument, and that is certainly what I'm working on in terms of how we build distance learning courses, and that is in line with the research that I've done myself on smart data presentation, how to agnosticize data sets and then present to a person depending on by harvesting grey data about a given demographic, so you can make informed decisions on how best to present that content to that person at that requirement. Yes, there are a whole slew of ethical conversations that need to happen there about making sure it's an equal playing field for everyone. and that is certainly something that I am very aware of before anybody pulls me up on it, and I have had conversations. In fact, yesterday somewhat serendipitous, I was recording a video about research ethics. So yeah, but that goes back to a former life of where I was actually looking at that from an academic standpoint. Now I'm utilizing it in a production environment in line with what's needed in the sector. So yeah, I literally went off on one there. So I'm just gonna stop talking now, because this is gonna end up being like 15 minutes long. This is just a brain dump, innit? Right, I'm gonna go and play some Warhammer. My shoulder's killing me, my back is killing me, and so I'm gonna see if I can stand up. In fact, I'm not even playing Warhammer tonight. No, not even Warhammer or Warhammer. I'm recording a podcast about Warhammer, and I'm very excited to do so because last week was a summer preview. So if you've not checked out my podcast that I do with my friend Will, it comes out every other week when my videos about Warhammer don't come out over on my YouTube channel. I'll link all my things together so you can find the podcast. So if you want to hear two middle-aged men talk for 3 or 4 hours about Warhammer every 2 weeks, you know, you should hit us up. Right, have a good one. I will see you all later. Toodle pip. Have a good one.